Hello, hello. Andre Khatchaturian here, joined with, back from his hiatus. He was moving across the country from the Siouxland to Fresno. Jason Takhtadjian back with us. Jason, I'm not going to lie, last time hosting this podcast, it was very difficult doing it all by myself with all the weight on my shoulders. I'm glad to have you back with me.
Well, I'm glad I can take some of the weight off of your shoulders. I'm glad to be back. Finally moved in Fresno. However, I'm in Vegas right now, so I'm always changing my location.
You are in Vegas. It doesn't appear so right now. You're in a room in a home, but you are in Las Vegas, getting ready for UFC 300. You'll be covering it there for Armenian Sports News. You landed there Wednesday night. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon, ahead of the UFC press conferences, which will take place on Thursday night, and of course the weigh-ins on Friday, and then the fight on Saturday, Arman Tsarukyan's fight, which will take place on the main card of UFC 300 against Charles Oliveira, which is touted to be a lightweight eliminator bout, meaning the winner will likely be in the lightweight championship bout against Islam Makhachev at some point. But Dana White is Dana White, and who knows what he does after, but that's what he said. So, we're getting ready for that, and we have a lot to talk about regarding UFC 300. But before we get into that, we need to talk about something very important, a historic week in Armenian sports history, a historic week for Armenian women, the Armenian women's soccer team. Stateside, the United States, we saw the women's college basketball take over, and with Caitlin Clark and the crazy March Madness, 18 million viewers for the final. And in Armenia, the women are making headlines as well. For the first time in more than 1,000 days, the Armenian women's soccer team won a game, defeating Bulgaria 3-2 in the women's Euro qualifiers. A historic event, and even more historic is the fact that it was the first time in 13 years they won a road game. So I'm very excited about that. Just 3-2, an amazing emotional victory. You look at all the goals, Jason. They were legit goals, very athletic ability, on all the goals.
Yeah, it's really surprising, but in a good way, because you're talking about a really young Armenian women's national team that's being able to, literally, be with among the best. Bulgaria is no joke. They're a good team. The players themselves on the national team have acknowledged that. But I mean, the first goal coming in the 43rd minute before halftime from Laura Kazanjian, who actually plays her soccer in Creighton women's soccer in Nebraska. And she opens the goal scoring with a fantastic goal. And then they double the lead just after halftime, thanks to Veronika Asatrian making it 2-0. Now, the game was far from over, because Bulgaria responded with 2 goals of their own, making it, a tight contest. Armenia trying to, salvage something out of this, because a draw is still notable for this team.
Even if it was a draw, we would have led the show off with this. Armenia got a point. But no, What happened next, Jason? Tell us what happened next.
I mean, added time starts. I think they gave him 7 minutes of added time. And within the first minute of added time, the 91st minute, an 18-year-old Ani Safarian takes the ball solo on the left-hand side, has 2 defenders closing her down. She cuts into the right side of the box and finishes in the bottom right-hand corner to win the game for Armenia. That's their first win in a European qualifier in 13 years, ever since they beat the Faroe Islands back in 2011.
That's another thing. Faroe Islands versus Bulgaria. I think Bulgaria is a little more steeper competition. And we're 2 weeks removed of me leading off the show, completely bashing the men's squad and the ineptitude that the men's national team has. And I still feel that way about the men's squad. They just so much hype and then just nothing to show for it. And we got a lot of backlash on social media from other outlets, but hey, we're gonna stand on that ground. We just talk about. We're not trying to hurt anybody. We're just saying what's happening. The Armenian men players aren't performing well. There's a lot of hype around them, and they come and they're not doing well. Stop making excuses that they're not being positioned. They're not playing the right positions or something. Lionel Messi doesn't have that excuse. You put him as a defensive player, he's still going to score a goal. You put him as a striker, he's going to score a goal. So don't give me those excuses. But the women's team, exciting time to for the national team. And you mentioned what's interesting about these players, they're all young women, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and they play in NCAA. So they're the Safarian you mentioned, the game-winning goal, she plays at Columbia. So there's a lot of hype surrounding these players. Hopefully they live up to their hype, unlike the men's team.
Hey, I mean, whenever we have results like this or the men's team going on and having results against teams like North Macedonia, the expectations rise. So with the expectations rising, that means we're going to hold them all to a higher standard. And I think that's what we all need to do, because it would be amazing, whether it's the men's or the women's team, to make it to the country's first major tournament, period. Men's or women's side, they haven't been able to make it to a European championship, let alone a World Cup, especially now the World Cup format is going to change starting 2026. So more teams are going to be able to compete and qualify. Expectations going to rise. And, the hope is to see Armenia in one of those competitions, men's or women's, sooner than later.
And with that, we would like to highlight a couple of, we're going to try to do this on a weekly basis. Athlete of Spotlight, kind of an athlete of the week, athlete spotlight, whatever you want to call it. Once we get this segment sponsored, we'll come with an official name for it, right, Jason? Yep. But basically, you and I are going to pick one Armenian athlete who in the last last week has deserved the spotlight. And Jason, I'm going to let you start off.
Yeah, we're going to start off in the boxing scene, more specifically the bare-knuckle boxing scene. Agnesa Kirakosian ended up winning a title. She won the super flyweight championship in the bare-knuckle boxing scene. It was her third bare-knuckle boxing fight. She's now 6-1 in her pro boxing career, and she has the belt to show for it. She is now a champion. She beat Shelby Cannon in a unanimous decision win. I believe that fight took place down in Florida. And, it's amazing to see somebody like Agnesa Kirakosian coming up in the ranks with boxing, now making that switch to bare knuckle, and is now a champion. Something else that's really nice and cool to note, maybe not for Agnesa during the moment, but she broke her right hand while she was boxing Shelby Cannon. And during an interview I did with her actually a couple of days ago for the weekly, she told me that she was thinking to herself while she was fighting, man, why is this girl's head so hard? And it turned out that when she landed a right hand, hook shot, she broke her hand and she had to go and get treated right afterwards. She's getting treatment right now. And she told me that now she's able to celebrate it because she was a little bit too preoccupied over the fact that her right hand was broken.
That's unbelievable. I saw that as well. And, broken hand, I don't think a broken hand bothers any of these bare knuckle fighters. They're fighting with their bare knuckles, no gloves. They have something else in their DNA that allows them to do that. So, I think a broken hand might be the least of our concerns when you're getting all those shots to the face and everything. But absolutely, that's a fantastic performance by Kirakosian. And she's definitely making some headlines. People have noticed her now, and that sport is growing as well. Bare knuckle boxing. Some people think it's a little controversial, but but it is what it is. People thought the UFC was controversial once, and now we're at UFC 300. So what's that?
And they still do, but it still continues.
Yeah, you're not going to make everyone happy, as we've learned.
Exactly,
Jason. The athlete I want to highlight is another woman. We're highlighting International Women's Month was over, but we are highlighting all the women. I'm going to highlight a woman as well, Izzy Jamgotchian. She is a softball player at the Loyola Marymount University, a sophomore from Pasadena, California, and went to my high school, Crescenta Valley High. She had the game of her life on April 7th. This was earlier this week against Cal. Again, she plays for LMU. She went 3 for 3 and with 3 RBI and demolished the ball to center field, hit a home run to help her team win. And, she's having a great year, 6 home runs on the season with 24 RBI, and she's hitting 322. So, and again, really great stats, great numbers, and you don't really see Armenian women playing softball. So that's why this stands out to me. it's excellent to see Armenians shining in all different sports, especially Armenian women. And Armenians are very traditional. Maybe sometimes growing up, like parents don't want their daughters to be playing sports, but here we are. We seeing one bare-knuckle champion and another woman who's bashing home runs on the softball diamond, and the national soccer team getting a much needed win, a road win. So I think it's a remarkable achievement, and best of luck to Jamgotchian going forward. Continued success to her. Yeah, she set career highs in hits, doubles, and home runs in that game against Cal and RBI. So congratulations to her. And she was, I forget what conference LMU was in, but she was the one of the she received an honor, like a conference
She was a
player.
player of the week.
Yeah, player of the week honors. That's and she's also the athlete of the week on ASN podcast. Congratulations.
There you go.
And one thing I want to add as well with the softball team is, Jason, you spoke to someone who's trying to organize softball in Armenia, and she has tried to find softball players all over the country to kind of band together a team. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that in the next few years.
Absolutely. Leslie Korkci Valenti is the lady who's trying to organize Armenia's first softball or baseball 5 is what they call it, first team of that liking. And this is a step in the right direction, especially being able to find someone like Izzy that has also expressed some interest in, representing Armenia.
Absolutely. And, very positive show this week so far, Jason. And like last week when you weren't here, I was railing on the soccer team, but this is a good positive week so far. And now we'll shift gears to why you are in Vegas. UFC 300. Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira, huge lightweight bout. Charles Oliveira was the lightweight champion, and he's not the champion anymore. Islam Makhachev is. But this fight, the winner of that, Dana White has said, will fight Makhachev in the lightweight title bout later on this year. So we actually, our podcast guest this week is UFC MMA reporter Aaron Bronsteter of Sportsnet in Canada, previously with TSN. Now he's with Sportsnet in Rogers Sportsnet. So he broke down the fight for us, and he in a better way that we would ever break it down. He's a MMA expert, but you're down there, and it's a big scene for Armenians because you're going to have, Vegas isn't far from LA, and LA has a huge Armenian community. We're going to see a bunch of Armenians there. It's going to be kind of a home crowd for Tsarukyan, in contrast to what he saw in Miami at the press conference, and he was getting booed by a lot of Brazilians in Florida, and his opponent is Brazilian, and people were yelling at him saying he's going to lose and things of that nature. So it's always exciting to see an Armenian excel in UFC, and it makes it exciting. I know here in Boston there's going to be a watch party for the fight, and we haven't seen an Armenian fighter at this caliber since I would say Tsarukyan has surpassed Gegard Mousasi. I know Mousasi won a championship in Bellator, but as far as the UFC goes, this is as close as it gets, and it's pretty exciting time.
Especially if he beats Oliveira, right? Especially like you said, he beats Oliveira, and according to Dana White, the winner will go on to face Islam. Now, it depends what's going to happen during the summer if Islam's going to end up taking another fight prior to that. But it remains to be seen because both Oliveira and Tsarukyan are both coming off wins against Dariush. They're both in similar paths. Tsarukyan, 27 years old, trying to go get that lightweight title. Oliveira lost it to Makhachev, so he's trying to get it back, trying to get that opportunity back. It's going to be a battle, and I think Armenian fans are going to be showing out. We're going to definitely have that coverage here on ASN to see just how many Armenian fans do show up. Like you said, Vegas has a big population. It's close proximity to Southern California, and the expectation is it's going to be a rowdy crowd.
Yeah, and it should be. And it's what's wild is that that's not even the main event. It's the fourth main event. It's not even the co-main event. UFC 300 is going to be a historic card. So you have two title fights, and then you have what they call the BMF title fight, which is kind of a symbolic title fight for the toughest UFC fighter, Justin Gaethje, who's also a lightweight contender, taking on Max Holloway. We'll break all that down with Aaron later in the show when they spoke to him. We talked about all of that. But one interesting thing about Oliveira is he's had 44 fights in his career. Only 4 of them have gone to a decision. 40 of them have either ended in a knockout or a submission. So as far as entertainment value, you expect this one to have lots of fireworks. This isn't going to go the full 15 minutes. Someone's going to be either knocked out or choked out in this one. So, and both of these fighters have that power, that potential. Both of them, both of their last victories against Beneil Dariush, both of them were knockouts. Poor Beneil Dariush is getting knocked out left and right by these guys. So it's going to, I think, as far as entertainment value, this might win the fight of the night, especially considering both of these guys' track record. But with that said, Jason, you're going to be covering the fight all week long, all weekend there in Vegas. What are you most looking forward to seeing? You're covering your first UFC fight.
Yeah, like you said, you just said it's my first ever UFC fight. Not a lot of people get to say their first ever UFC fight that they go to cover or even attend as a fan is the marquee UFC 300. I'm really looking forward to just seeing so many notable faces all in the same roof, under the same roof, really. And on top of that, being able to see such a array of fights. Like you said, the Oliveira and Tsarukyan fight is just the second fight on the main card. And after that, there's at least 3 or 4 more fights until we get to the main event, Pereira versus Hill. So I'm looking forward to it. I am a big fan of combat sports in general. I've been to a couple boxing events before, but nothing really in the MMA scene other than something that was a little bit small back in the day. But this is going to be one of the biggest highlights for me in my young career too. I'm only 26, and it's a blessing for me to be able to have this opportunity to go and cover it and be able to create content for it too.
And what's amazing, UFC 300 is your first fight. UFC 200 was my first fight. So that was back in 2016, July 2016. Gegard Mousasi was on that card as well. So and that was with New England Sports Network many moons ago, 8 years ago. So congratulations. I hope you have a great time covering that fight. You went from covering the high school soccer in the Siouxland to now the biggest UFC event of the year. So I would say that's a step up, Jason.
I would say so too.
And with that said, let's I had a good conversation with Aaron Bronsteter. He broke down the fight in more detail, went into the X's and O's, if you will, and let's take it away. All right, Andre Khatchaturian of Armenian Sports News joined today with Sportsnet MMA reporter up in Canada, Aaron Bronsteter, who's joining us from Las Vegas at UFC 300. He will. How are you today, Aaron?
I'm good, Andre. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. And obviously Arman Tsarukyan is fighting at UFC 300 against Charles Oliveira on the main card. So we're gonna have you on and kind of break down the fight for us. Obviously, you've covered MMA for many years. So what do you see in this fight that kind of stands out to you between these two fighters?
I mean, really everything. This is just an incredible matchup because Arman's been looking great lately. In fact, I thought that I'm very, very hesitant to use the word robbery and to say that somebody should have won a fight because I can always see the nuance. But I thought that in the fight that he had against Gamrot, I thought he should have gotten the nod there. I just, if you're looking at damage first from a scoring criteria standpoint, I just thought that there's no way you could say that in a lot of those rounds that Gamrot was doing more damage than Arman was. Arman was landing, even from bottom, he was landing more, while Gamrot seemed to just be controlling that fight. And I've gone back and watched it, and I still have those same feelings. Usually I can change my mind and be like, well, I could see how the round could go that way. But in that particular fight, I just felt like he got a raw deal there. And to me, in my mind, I feel like he really has lost since that first fight against Islam Makhachev that he took on short notice, Islam being the champion now. I think he's just a tremendous athlete, so well-rounded, great everywhere. And I mean, with Charles Oliveira, you know what you're getting into with him. He's just going to, put you in dangerous situations for as long as the fight lasts. And I think, honestly, this fight being a 3-round fight rather than a 5-round fight plays to the advantage of Charles Oliveira because, he doesn't need to be that cautious with his energy systems like he has in the past in 5-round fights. Not that he really has been, because I don't think he's ever even seen the championship rounds, despite them being scheduled for that. But I think that Arman is really a builder. He's somebody who gets better as the fight goes on. So I think the 3 rounds, Charles is going to put him in as much danger as possible for as long as the fight lasts. But at the same time, we've seen how good Arman's gotten, and I think that he's the rightful favorite here. As much as I love Charles Oliveira and his game and how opportunistic he is, I think that from what we've seen from Arman, we're looking at a future champion at some point in time.
Right.
I'd say that with a lot of confidence that, even if he doesn't beat Charles Oliveira on Saturday, that Arman Tsarukyan will be a champion.
So you look at Tsarukyan. You talk about that Makhachev fight, which he took on short notice. Lost was one of his. I think it might have been his first UFC fight. Actually,
yeah,
he lost that fight. What have you seen from Tsarukyan from that time until now? How has he grown?
I think his striking has leveled up a lot since then. I think back then he was more of a grappling-based fighter, and I still think that he has a lot of really good grappling. And I think that the Gamrot fight probably made him go back to his grappling roots and get better at grappling defense and takedown defense. But I think that overall his game has just really leveled up in all areas. I think his striking defense has looked good. He did get into trouble in that one fight where he got rocked, and we haven't really seen it. I guess that was against Thiago Moises. I think he got rocked in that fight, and then we've seen him improve that element of his game since then, the striking defense. So I just think overall we're seeing incremental growth fight by fight, and at his current age, when he's 27 or 28 years old, we're still going to see a lot more growth over the next 2 years. So that's why I think he's kind of a scary proposition for everybody in that division right now, because at some point in time, he's going to be entering his prime years. And I think that's, when we're going to see him become a champion. I mean, it could be even sooner, right? If he beats Charles Oliveira, I think he's the #1 contender to get that rematch with Islam. And I think that given his skill set, that he can certainly hang with Islam at this point.
You mentioned he's 27. I was actually surprised when he mentioned that at the media day on Wednesday. I was like, whoa, he's only 27. I feel like he's been around forever. But yeah, he's very young. And you look at Oliveira, I think he's 34. We've seen many times former champions, after they lose the belt, they kind of just drop off. And it's very rare to see a former champion get back to that championship level again. I mean, we've seen Max Holloway kind of fade away. Obviously we many fighters, John Jones, I feel like, is the one exception who got back to that level. Do you kind of see that being an issue for Oliveira going into this fight?
No, not really. I think that with Charles Oliveira, like, his confidence has grown so much as a fighter that I think that he believes that he can be the champion again. I mean, you look at what's happened since he's lost to Islam. He had that fight against Beneil Dariush and really styled on him. Unfortunately fell out of the title fight in October, which I think would have probably answered your question as to whether or not he could become a champion again. But in the lightweight division particularly, this is an incredibly difficult division to be in. For Charles Oliveira to become champion again, I think would be a really big, a tall order. I think that, he probably believes in himself and believes that he can become a champion again, but very, very difficult under most circumstances to, especially when you're 35 years old, to recapture the gold in the lighter weight classes again, in particular,
right?
Where, fighters that are 35 and older in the lighter weight classes have historically been, I think, only one fighter in UFC history at 170 pounds or lower has beaten a younger opponent once they've hit 35 years of age. So I think that's in like 23 different fights. So it's something that we've seen historically has been very, very difficult to accomplish.
That's an incredible stat, actually. It's when you look at Oliveira, you briefly touched on this earlier, how the shorter fight kind of benefits him, the 3-round fight. I was looking at his numbers, 44 fights, only 4 of those fights have gone to decision, which is absolutely nuts. Given that, what do you think, each fighter has to do in order to win this fight?
Well, I think for Arman, it's basically about survival early. Like, Oliveira is at his most dangerous in the first 4 minutes of a fight. If Arman can stay out of trouble in those first 4 minutes, I think that if it goes to a decision, wins rounds 2 and 3. And I think that if there's a finish after the first round, it's probably Arman getting a finish in the second or third round. I think that really for Arman, it's mind your P's and Q's in the first round, get out of that round, and then from there you can kind of put your foot on the gas a little bit more. It's almost like you have to have a defensive mindset in that first round in order to beat Oliveira. He's going to throw the kitchen sink at you, and you need to resist it. And I think that that's what Arman is going to have to do, because I don't think Arman has fought anybody that is as aggressive. In fact, it's hard to find fighters in general that are as aggressive as Charles Oliveira. But I mean, a lot of the fighters that he's fought are not really potent finishers. If you look at who Arman Tsarukyan's beaten. So, you know, Bobby Green's a guy that typically wins decisions. Gamrot's a guy that typically wins decisions. Moises is a guy that, you know, he's a decent finisher, but not a guy that is as opportunistic as a guy like Charles Oliveira. You know, Islam's a good finisher, but back then he was kind of getting more decisions than he was finishes. So right. I think that this is going to be a different type of matchup that Tsarukyan has not yet faced. And it's going to be really interesting to see if he can rise to the occasion under that kind of circumstance.
So just one more question about the lightweight division. We talked about it, how crowded it is, how competitive it is. I know Gaethje has kind of said, all right, I'm conceding the lightweight title opportunity, even if he wins this fight. But do you see a scenario where if, say, Gaethje beats Holloway in dramatic fashion, first round, crazy finish, and Tsarukyan wins or Oliveira wins a tight split decision where the winner of this fight doesn't actually get to fight Islam?
Oh yeah, I can see that. I mean, the UFC does what the UFC wants to do. Whatever they think is going to be the more marketable fight or the one that the fans want. Like, there's not really a true pecking order in the UFC. In fact, it's looking like Dustin Poirier is going to end up fighting next for the title in June, right, in Newark, because they just need to fill the schedule and they need to look at the champions that are available, and Islam's there, right? And you look at Dustin, and he's lost to Gaethje recently, right? And if Gaethje gets a win against Holloway, it's like, so now Gaethje's beaten Dustin Poirier, and now Poirier is somehow jumping the queue and getting a title shot. Like, that's got to be very frustrating for Justin Gaethje, but that's the way that the UFC does things. Like, they need to fill spots. The train is always leaving the station with the UFC. So if it's going to be a fight that they need to make because of schedule reasons, and I mean, this fight's going to be at the beginning, but June 1st is the date for the Newark card. I mean, we're at April 11th. So if somebody won on Saturday, let's say it's Arman or Gaethje or whoever, like, they're not going to want to do a 6-week camp right after this fight and then fight for the championship. So they're going to book Poirier probably, right? It's just a consequence of them having to fill a schedule.
That's make it make sense, Aaron. Make it make sense. So do you give picks?
Yeah, I'll give you picks, whatever you want.
All right, then. Who do you think comes out with their arm raised on Saturday night, Tsarukyan or Oliveira?
It's a really tough question, right? Because I think more often than not, Tsarukyan wins that fight. But with Oliveira, like, I wouldn't bet against Oliveira at this spot. Like, if you have Oliveira as an underdog, and he's like I think he's more than a 2-1 underdog at this point in time. Like, you probably take the underdog for the value if you're going to, actually wager on this fight, because I think that the chances of Oliveira winning this fight, like, they're pretty high in the first round, right? It's almost one of those ones where you kind of want to watch, like, if you're into betting on fights live, watch it live. Right. Hope that Oliveira does really well in the first round, and then bet Arman at whatever even money or something going into the second if you can get some value on him. But I think that if this fight gets out of the first round, and not to say that Arman can't get a first round finish, we've seen him do it before. It's very, very possible that he gets a first round finish against Charles Oliveira. But I think the longer the fight goes, the more it favors Arman.
And we've seen Oliveira actually make comebacks as well. So it's
the Chandler fight, for example, got the finish early in the second round after almost losing in the first. Like, he's always dangerous as long as he's got his gas tank is going. And I think Arman is also a really, really difficult fighter for, from a matchup standpoint for Oliveira. I think that there's a lot of different things that Arman is going to be able to throw at Oliveira that he's not going to be able to, that he's going to have to really think about. And that's where you can beat Oliveira as well, as when you get Oliveira into situations where he's uncomfortable, because that's what he's looking to do to his opponents. So if you're able to turn the tables on him, and I think that that's something that somebody with the fight IQ of Arman is going to be able to potentially do.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time on this Thursday morning, and you enjoy your time out in Las Vegas and enjoy the fights, and we'll see what happens Saturday night.
Awesome, Andre. Hey, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Okay, 3, 2. Well, there you have it. Aaron Bronsteter. Always a pleasure. Always very well dressed. Jason, hopefully you meet him at UFC 300. Definitely a great resource and excellent analysis from him as always. And I loved what he said about the the betting for the match, for the bout. Tsarukyan is obviously a favorite, but he did say if Oliveira starts off strong, maybe live bet Tsarukyan, you might get some better value, maybe some plus money. So,
yeah, something to note, right? The most recent line that I have for Tsarukyan right now is -220. So you got to bet $220 to win $100. So not too much value for your money there. So in-game bets might be the move.
Well, the stat I just mentioned, actually, for Oliveira, 4 decisions in 44 matches. Maybe you parlay a Tsarukyan win with a prop bet such as the fight will not end in a decision. I don't know if that one gave you plus money, but regardless, we'll be back next week, Jason. We're taking a short. I don't even know if I've told you this. We're not taking a 2-week break for a podcast. We're coming back right next week to break down the fight, the post-fight analysis, and get your experiences on it. It'll be just kind of put a bow on UFC 300 and move forward. So, episode 5 will be next week. And thank you guys so much for watching episode 4. For Aaron Bronsteter, for Jason Takhtadjian, I'm Andre Khatchaturian. See you next time.